All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad you guys got the email. So, SEM 15, I have like literally 2 minutes to spare from Meyer's ending. So, next week we move to 7:30, and we'll see. We'll see how things go. And once Mincha Meyerv gets to around 7:45, we'll move the share back to seven. And this is I think my fourth year here, and it still surprised me every year when the clock changes that I get caught off guard. So thank you for adjusting, everybody. All right. So we're on the top of Chav Zayin Amid Aleph. That's 27a. And we're at the Mishnah there. So it should be pretty easy to identify. I would be willing to wager, though it might be us or two, depending on the sugi of gambling. But I'd be willing to bet that it's the first section in Art Scroll still. Okay, very good. Here we go. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. There's going to be two different disagreements in this Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Arba Esrei Sudos Chayv Adam Lechel Besukkah Achas, Achas B'Yom V'Achas B'Layla, that one is required to eat 14 meals in the Sukkah, once during the day and once at night for 7 days. That gets you to 14 meals. Whereas V'Chachamim Omrim, Ein L'Davar Kitzvah, there's no set amount, meaning you're not required to eat in the sukkah the other days, but if you do choose to eat a meal, then you have to eat in a sukkah. But you don't have to go out of your way to have a meal that would just so you can eat in the sukkah. Chutz mileile yom tov rishon shel chag bavad, except for the first night of Sukkot, in which there's a mitzvah to go out of your way, even if you were not hungry, to still have a meal in the sukkah. And this gets into that whole sugya. We'll talk about what happens when it's raining on the first night of Sukkot. Should I go in anyway because there's a special chiyuv on the first night? So that's why there's special parameters for that. That's disagreement number one. The next machlokis in the Mishnah, Va'od Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Mishlo Achal Leili Yom Tov Arishon, Yashlim B'Leili Yom Tov Achron. If you missed there's a debate if the word Lele should be in there, but if you missed the beginning of Yom Tov, you can have an extra meal on Shmini Atzeres to make up for that. B'Leili Yom Tov Achron Shel Chag. V'Chachamim Omrim, Ein L'Davar Tashlumin, there is nothing you could do at this point. Sorry, Charlie. Balzem Nemar, quoting from Mishlei, I believe. Oh, sorry, Koheles. Okay, I was close. Me'uvatz lo yuchal liskom v'chetzron lo yuchal lehimanos. So something which is twisted cannot be fixed. Something that's missing can no longer be counted. So apparently, if you missed the first one, you missed the day at the beginning, you have a chance next year to do it again, but there's nothing you can do to make up for it at this point. Makes sense that that's in Koheles. Very cheery theme to that, of course. Okay. Any just basic clarification questions? Anything I can just explain basic clarity in the Mishnah? Okay, very good. Right? We're no longer doing all these very abstract concepts about measuring sukkahs, which I know some architects enjoy, but kind of my head was doing all sorts of flips. This is when you think about the sugyos related to the holiday of Sukkot, that's really, we're in prime real estate right now. My time at Rabbi Eliezer. So what is Rabbi Eliezer's reasoning that you have to have 14 meals in the sukkah, 2 for each day? Teshu Kain Taduru. It's based on our age-old principle that you should dwell in the sukkah the way you would dwell in your home. The same way that you would have, right, back in the day, they didn't have breakfast, lunch, and supper. It was more a morning meal and an evening meal. That's how they structured things. So the same way you have some breakfast in the morning and dinner in the evening at home, you should do the same thing in a sukkah. Rabbanon Kidira. Madira ibai achal ibai lo achil. Afsaganami ibai achal ibai lo achil. The same way in my house, I can choose whether I'm going to be sitting down for a formal meal or whether I'm going out to eat tonight. The same idea for a sukkah as well. Teshu Kain Tuduru. So maybe on the first night, we're going to see in just a moment, there's a special obligation. But in general, I don't have to go out of my way. I'm allowed to skip a meal if I want. If I want to accept a fast, I can do that. But now, if I have a meal, I need to eat it in the sukkah. But I don't have to have a meal if I don't want to. Ihachi, Afilu leila yom tov rishon nami. Well, then we can ask, what about the first night? Why am I bothering going into the sukkah on the first night then? If we say Teshu came to Duro. So Amar Rav Yochanan, Mishum Rav Shimon, Ben Yotzarak, Nemar Kan. This is a very important thing to know. Nemar Chamisha Sar, Nemar Kan Chamisha Sar, Nemar Chamisha Sar B'Chag HaMatzos. That we have a connection between Sukkot and Pesach. That they have, it's a Gezerah Shava of Tesvav. Sukkot is on the 15th. It begins. Pesach begins on the 15th. It's not a coincidence that they start on the same days, but the idea is that they don't just simply share the same date, meaning not different months, but the same day of the month, but they share many similar dinim as well. And Mala Halan Laila Harishon Chova Mikava Elach Rishos, just as the first night of Pesach, having the meal with the matzah is obligatory. Afkan Laila Harishon sorry, let me reread that. Mala Laila Rishon Chova Mikava Elach Rishos. Afkan Laila Rishon Chova Mikava Elach Rishos. So for Sukkot, the first night you need to eat in the sukkah, even if you're not feeling hungry. You go in there, you have a meal anyway. But every other day, only if you have a meal, then you have to eat in the sukkah. You don't have to go out of your way. So how you don't have to go out of your way to eat matzah the rest of Pesach. We did a shir on this a while back. There's a gra, the Vilna Gaon believes. Toby, you remember that one? I see you're nodding over there. So okay, very good. So should I test you on it now, or should I say it? But you remember there was a shir we did. But basically, the Vilna Gaon said that there might not be an obligation to eat matzah the other days, but there's what we call a mitzvah kiyumis, that there's this elusive category. Usually when we think of a mitzvah, you've probably heard this before, where a rabbi got up there and said, it's called a mitzvah because it's a tzivoy, it's obligatory, it's not just a nice thing you do. Well, it turns out that's usually true, but there's a few things out there that might be considered mitzvah kiyumis. Moshe Feinstein iconically believed that moving to Israel was one of them. That you get points if you do it, but you don't lose out if you don't. So the Gra believed that there was like this mitzvah kiyumis to eat matzah on Pesach, and so I think there's a bit of a discussion whether that could be extrapolated to some kind of mitzvah kiyumis, seemingly by eating in the sukkah. It would seem to be pshat, actually. I think, in fact, maybe he infers it from sukkah. I have to look back. Paul.
So if there's a sort of like a meal, it's a meal you have to have. On Shabbos, you're supposed to have 3 meals. So must you eat all 3 meals on Shabbos in the sukkah?
Good point. Yeah, you would have to have those meals on Shabbos in the sukkah. But there, it's not stemming from the obligation. There's no intrinsic obligation in the sukkah. It's that Shabbos obligates you to have a meal, and because it's sukkahs, if you're gonna have a meal, you have to have it in the sukkah. So your point of departure is the chiyuv of the suda, which then results in the sukkah, instead of your chiyuv is the sukkah, which then results in putting together a meal. Very good.
And so it's 15 meals in the sukkah, not 14.
15
meals in the sukkah.
Oh, interesting. Well, I guess it depends what you make of Shal Shudas. In fact, Tosos talks about Shal Shudas. Maybe we'll get to this Tosos toward the end of the shir. There's a bit of a debate as to whether Shal Shudas really needs to be on bread or not. There's different tiers, but it's an astute point. So let's just wrap up this section. V'hasminon, well, we're okay. I get it. We created a wormhole between Pesach and Sukkot to transfer dinim. But if we're learning from Pesach and we're inferring from there that the first night is obligatory, how do I know that the first night is obligatory for Pesach then? Samar Kra, Be'erev Toklu Matzos, Akasu Kavuchova. You can see explicitly, it says Be'erev, that evening. So there's a mandate, at very least, for that first night of Pesach, you are obligated to have the meal with the matzah. And the rest of the nights, the rest of the days, it is, have fun, arguably some kind of kiyum of a mitzvah taking place there. All right. End of that piece. Going forward.
Rabbi, I'm sorry, but if you're making the comparison, then on Pesach, you have to eat matzah for all meals on the first day or just the first night?
First night. So
that's different than with Sukkot, because here you're saying all meals on the first day, not just the first night.
Just night for Sukkot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Glad we clarified that one.
Thank you.
Okay. V'omer Amar Rabbi Eliezer. V'omer Rabbi Eliezer, Arbas Reisudos Chayav Adam Lecho B'Sukkah, Achas B'Yom V'Achas B'Layla. What's the question over here? The question is, how can you do a tashlumin when you have to have these 14 meals? How are you gonna work that out? In fact, if you look at Rashi, where's the Rashi on it? Rashi says, "Ukevan to be yoma achron lav b'sukkah Yosef, v'yashav al l'shem mitzvah over al tosif, my hashlam of the sukkah ikahacha." The question is, if you're going to do the tashlumen on Shmini Atzeres, but Shmini Atzeres, right? We have this whole thing in Chutzlar is about sitting in the Sukkah Shmini Atzeres because it's Sveika Diyoma, because the additional day. But really, in Eretz Yisrael, by standard biblical standards, where there's 7 days and then Shmini Atzeres, how can you do tashlumen for a meal in the Sukkah that you missed if on Shmini Atzeres you're not allowed to sit in the Sukkah because of Baal Tosef? Because then you're adding on to the mitzvah of Sukkah. You need at least 1 day that will serve as a heker, as a clear, like mechitza between Sukkot and the rest of the days of the year. Otherwise, it looks like you added on an additional day of Sukkot. So how does that work out? So Amar Bira Amar Rabbi Ami, Chazer Bo Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer rescinded his opinion. Now, which opinion did he back out on? He backed out on his first opinion in the Mishnah, which is the obligation to have 14 meals. But actually, according to Rashi, he still maintains that you could do a tashlumen. This works out nicely. Since he actually reversed his opinion and conceded to the Chachamim that you need to have the first night, a meal in the Sukkah on the first night, and the rest is voluntary, so to speak, then he can maintain you have the rest of Sukkot to do tashlumen if you miss the first night. So, but the issue is, if he maintains you could do tashlumen, but he also maintains that all 14 meals in the Sukkah are required, you don't have a day where you could do that tashlumen. That's the issue. All right. The next part of the Gemara, there's a bit of a discussion whether this was like before he rescinded, and it's a little bit of out of order, because basically the question over here makes it sound like you have to do something extra special at the meal. I think the easiest way to read this next section of the Gemara is that you have to kind of read this as chronologically out of order. This is before Rabbi Eliezer rescinded his 14-day opinion. Okay, so now, mini section over here. Mashlim b'mai. What can I use to make up for a missed meal? Ilema berifta. So suda diyome ka'achil. If you're going to have bread, it's going to be like you're adding just bread. You're having a real, suda, but you're already obligated in the suda. So how are you making up for that lost meal? Elamai yashlim b'mini targima. You should have mini targima. You should have like Rashi says, harparos u'ma'adanim, afanav go peiros u'kisanin, u'kaflutos muvushalos. Basically different fruits and different palate cleansers and stuff, adding some flair to the meal. That by doing something above and beyond the standard meal, that's how you do your tashlumin. And Tani Nami Hachi, indeed, there's a brisa that supports this. Im Hishlim b'mini targima yatsa. So it's interesting, actually, is that we're not going to go through the whole thing, but Tosas on the bottom of the Amud actually raises the question about what the definition of mini targima are. Tosa says that it might not be fruits and different kinds of snack-like delicacies that Rashi mentioned, but Tosa says that actually, I believe they mentioned it's referring to basar, to meat. Basar v'dagim, meat and fish, and then they say. And certainly, ve'ein lilmo mikan shio ilu mini targima lahashlim shel sudos shel Shabbos. That he says that even though we could use mini targima to effectuate the tashlumin, the compensatory measure for missing a day of a meal on Sukkot, nonetheless, they will not be sufficient to be Yotzei Shalashudas. So again, there's different opinions as to what you could be Yotzei Shalashudas with, and Tosos takes a stronger stance on the matter. So just interesting to note that he kind of connects those two areas of halacha. Okay, on to the next section in the Gemara. Shal apotropos shal Agrippas hamelech. Now, I think we brought up Agrippas hamelech. Well, actually, this will be coming up in our. We did do this year actually. This was a 10:30 shir. Remember where I was sitting? We were in the social hall because there was a team meeting in the chapel, and we did a tshuva for Moshe Feinstein on chanifa. On flattering is usually the translation, but it means basically trying to flatter someone by misrepresenting halacha. So I believe as Agrippas Hamelech, the Jewish people were punished because even though Agrippas was, because of his family lineage, etc., he was not actually qualified to be a king of the Jewish people, but the people wanted to ingratiate themselves with him. So he said, don't worry, you're one of us, you're one of us. And the Jewish people were punished for that. Anyway, just that's Agrippas Hamelech. But his bio is not important for this. So the apotropos of Agrippas Hamelech, the person who kind of, will look after things for him, of Agrippas Hamelech. So he asked, as Rabbi Eliezer, Kagod ani she'eni ragalecho ela suda achas bayom mahu. I only eat one meal a day. So according to you, since I have to have 14 meals, what am I supposed to do? Again, same idea that it seems like this is before he rescinded his opinion. Sha'ochel suda achas ve'eftar. Do I just eat one meal and then I've discharged my obligation? Don't you snack throughout the day? You have some snacks throughout the day. Now you're gonna get lazy and you can't eat a little snack in the sukkah for the glory of God. So that's number one. That in other words, he has to have both meals in the sukkah, according to Rabbi Eliezer, before he rescinded his ruling on that. Va'od shalu, I brought this one up between Mincha and Mariv, and there were two Persians who were with us, and you'll see why this was relevant. Va'od shalu, I have one woman in Tiberia and I have one woman in Sipori, whom seem to be his wives or concubines. And each one respectively has their own sukkah that I spent some time in. Do I go from one sukkah to the next? Amar lo, shani omer kol yotzim sukkah bitum mitzvah sharishona. We're going to see in a moment where Eliezer says is going to hold. We're going to see the Bryce in just a moment, that you have to spend 7 consecutive days in the same sukkah. Not only do you have to have 2 meals a day, but it's 2 meals a day in the very same sukkah for all 7 days. So I said this with Tumei Chamar. I'm like, yeah, it's not really halach l'maisa question, but it's interesting. And then I saw some Sephardic representation on it. I said, well, I mean, for those of us who accepted Chayim to Rabbeinu Gershom, and then they're like, no, it's a real halach l'maisa for people in our circles. So I'm like, all right, I'll take it from you guys. So you see, many cases we always say, why am I learning this in the Gemara? It's not relevant. Well, it shouldn't be relevant for any of us, but apparently it's relevant for some people. Anyway, so what is that brisa that records the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, who says that you have to spend all 7 days in the same sukkah? I should clarify that we don't paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. You don't need to spend all 7 days consecutively in the same sukkah. Tiny Rabbi Eliezer Omer, turning the Amud to next Amud. In Yotzim Sukkah, one does not go from one sukkah to the other. It doesn't mean I think that's usher to go on a sukkah hop. It just means that you should consistently be holding your meals in the same sukkah. Right? And Rashi even says, Lechol bezo, Lishon bezo, Ohayom bezo, Machar bezo. There should be kind of like an established sukkah. Okay, maybe according to Rashi, he was against sukkah hopping. We'd have to look into that. So in Yotzim sukkah, you're not allowed to build a sukkah on Chol HaMoed. Whereas the sages say, Yotzim sukkah, you can go sukkah hopping, but sukkah, you can even construct a sukkah on Chol HaMoed. Because of course you can't do it on the first days of Sukkot, nor I guess toward the end doesn't really matter, but you can't make it on the first days of Sukkot because that's an Isser Malachma to build a sukkah. But Chol Moed, it would be fair game. But even Rabbi Eliezer would concede the Shavin, Shem Nafla, that it fell down, there's a nor'easter that comes and blows down the sukkah that was constructed before Yom Tov. That on Chol Moed, you can reconstruct it. My time Eliezer. Amar Kra Chag Sukkos Taslcha Shivas Yamin. So it says that you shall make a sukkah for you 7 days. Also, I see sukkah l'shiva. Remove the word haruya probably. You shall make a sukkah literally for 7 days. That you'll spend 7 days in that sukkah. Rabbanan hachikamar achmana. I say sukkah b'chag. Make a sukkah for chag. That, and Rashi kind of fills in here. That is ra'ui. That's able to stand up for 7 days. We talked about this in the past. That the sukkah has to be able to stand up for 7 days. But it doesn't mean you have to spend 7 consecutive days in the same sukkah. And then for Rabbanan, we just said that, the Shavin, the Nafla, and they all agree, meaning even Rabbi Eliezer concedes that if the sukkah falls down, then you can reconstruct it a Chol Moed. Pshita, well, why would I think otherwise? I would think to say, possibly, that within Shitas Rabbi Eliezer, who requires 7 consecutive days, if it falls down a Chol Moed, you reconstruct it, it's no longer the same sukkah. You've made a new sukkah altogether. It's like always, I had this interesting question whenever I watched Star Trek, and they would teleport you from one place to the other. So I always had this question, I don't know the science behind it, but so they basically kind of they scan you and then they reconstruct you. So do you maintain your original consciousness? How does that work in terms of, right? So I had all these kind of questions, philosophical questions that came out of, whenever you say Scotty beam me up, is that really the real Captain Kirk? Is that a new version of Captain Kirk? What happened to the original? So these, we'll have to resolve that at some point. I don't have a resolution to it, but it would seem from this Gemara, if we need a precedent, that it's still considered the original sukkah, even though it fell down and was reconstructed. So here's your precedent in the Gemara for the philosophy of teleportation. Kamash Malad, it's the same sukkah. So you don't have to worry about continuity issues when they come around with building teleportation devices. All right, shkayach everyone, and that brings us to Chav Zayin Amid Beis, and God willing, we'll pick it up at 7:30 p.m. next week. Amir Tashem, wishing everybody a wonderful Shabbos. Oh, Toby, yes? I gotta mute yourself.
Yeah, on the timing, Thursday is Tanis Esther. Does that affect any?
Ooh, that was a good catch. How are people's Wednesday nights looking? Because I don't want to, I'm going to be stuffing my face and trying to teach the Gemara at the same time, right? So that's probably not a good idea. Let me just ask offhand, my Wednesday evening is open. Should we do 7:30 Wednesday evening? No objections? No objections?
I'm okay with that.
What? No, not good? All right.
Not good.
Or maybe we could just start a little later.
Would that be helpful? If we did
I've got something that evening, sorry. It doesn't matter.
Or should I just do it Wednesday as a one-off? I'll record it, and if it doesn't work for people, you listen to the recording, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Okay, I understand. For some people, works, some it doesn't. It's just not a. Or wait. One other suggestion.
I'm saying if you couldn't maybe start on Thursday at 8 o'clock.
Right. Or we could do Thursday earlier in the day. Does Thursday earlier in the day work? I'm happy to. Okay, Baruch Hashem, our shir has a lot of people in it, and it's not gonna, we're not gonna find one time works. So everyone, you'll forgive me for this 1 week. We're gonna do 7:30 Wednesday night. I will record it, so if anyone's not able to make it synchronously, you catch up asynchronously, and then God willing, the following week we'll all come back together on the same page. All right, I'll try not to do anything overly fun and enjoyable. No, I'm kidding. I try to make everything. Well, I try to. I don't know if I succeed. Okay, so I'll send an email 7:30 p.m. Wednesday. Again, my apologies for those who can't make it. I'll record it for you, and we'll all be together in spirit. Okay. All right. Have a good Shabbos, everyone. Take care.
You can have it.